Antimicrobial resistance. You might have heard of it, but what does it really mean, and what can we do about it? Let's start from the beginning and talk about what antimicrobials are. There are different types of germs that can make you sick, such as bacteria, fungi, and protozoa. To treat these infections, we can take medications to kill the germs. These medications are specific to each type of germ, like antibiotics for bacteria, antifungals for fungi, and antiprotozoal drugs for protozoa. You're likely most familiar with antibiotics, and we're going to focus on those today since antibiotic resistance in particular is a really urgent issue in the world. Antibiotics can kill bacteria by messing with parts of the bacteria that are needed for their survival. You can think of these super important parts like little organs inside the bacteria. Antibiotics can block or destroy these vital organs, which can cause the bacteria to die. So, what does antibiotic resistance mean? It's essentially how the bacteria fight back against antibiotics so that they don't die. For example, if these little blue diamonds represent the antibiotics, there are lots of ways that antibiotic-resistant bacteria can fight back. Resistant bacteria can actually spit out antibiotics inside of it, or prevent the antibiotics from ever entering in the first place. Resistant bacteria can also change the way their important organs look like, or even work to prevent antibiotics from messing with their function. Or resistant bacteria can turn off the antibiotic by cutting it up into pieces or blocking it off with other molecules. So why is antibiotic resistance bad? Well, if ever you get an infection in your hand or your lungs or even your brain or blood, you want to be able to get rid of those dangerous bacteria quickly and effectively. But if those bacteria are able to avoid being killed by antibiotics, it will take much longer to treat your infection and require lots of different medications to find ones that actually work before the infection gets too severe. Now you may be wondering, how do some bacteria even become resistant in the first place? The answer lies in their genetic makeup, or their DNA. Sometimes bacteria just naturally have the genes needed to resist antibiotics, just like some people naturally have brown eyes or red hair. Other times, bacteria will get random mutations in their DNA during their lifetime, and these mutations can sometimes allow them to gain new abilities, like resist antibiotics. In either case, bacteria can actually share resistance with each other. As you can imagine, this is a huge problem because resistant bacteria can basically just hand over pieces of DNA to normal bacteria, which can make them become resistant to antibiotics too. So, what can we do to help prevent or slow down antibiotic resistance? We can do this by minimizing exposure to antibiotics. That's because before taking antibiotics, there will naturally be a mix of bacteria that are susceptible to antibiotics, as well as bacteria that are resistant to antibiotics. When we take antibiotics, the susceptible bacteria will likely die off, but the resistant bacteria might continue to live since they can fight back against the antibiotics. Now that resistant bacteria have more space and access to resources like food, it's basically free to take over. This is a process known as selection. The key is that antibiotics are good and a great tool to fight infections when they are used correctly. So this is exactly where you come into the picture. First, we need to be smart about the usage of our prescription antibiotics. This means taking our antibiotics exactly as prescribed by our doctor. We also need to only use our antibiotics to treat the infection for which they were prescribed. Remember that antibiotics only work against bacteria, so they won't be helpful if you have an infection caused by a fungus or a virus. We should also never share our antibiotics with others. If a friend or family member is sick and thinks they need a prescription, you should recommend they see a healthcare professional. If you are someone who consumes meat, you can support producers who only use antibiotics when necessary in their farm animals. This means only using antibiotics to actually treat infections and not as a replacement for a clean and safe environment for the farm animals. And very importantly, a great way to prevent the need for antibiotics is by getting vaccinated. You may still get an infection if you're vaccinated, but the infection will likely be less severe since your own immune system will be able to fight off the germs more effectively, so you might not need antibiotics at all. Now, these actions may seem simple, but they really can make a world's difference in the fight against antimicrobial resistance. Together, our small actions can make for a big impact. If you're interested in learning more about antimicrobial resistance, the World Health Organization is an excellent resource.